Hey everyone, Jason here, and I'm back with another Nanocoaster video. Today we're going to be doing Medusa from Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This is a B&M floorless in California that's sitting in a parking lot, but not the one that always gets crap for it. But no, this is a fantastic ride. This is actually the first Nanocoaster from Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Hopefully we see a Joker one here in the future, and this is available in the park for $37.99. As of right now, it is not available on the Six Flags website. Hopefully that changes in the future, but right now this is only available in the park. This year Medusa got a new coat of paint. It looks great in the park, but also it got a Nanocoaster, so apparently the park is investing a little bit into it. So let's jump right in. So in the box you will have the base plate here. This is what we're going to put the coaster onto. The kit includes 2 track sheets. We have a double-sided sheet of instructions here, and we also have a little tip sheet kind of telling you how to cut it out. It tells you to use nail clippers. We're going to be using wire cutters for this. So the first thing we're going to do before we jump in here is to peel off the white paper here on the base plate. This is a step that people sometimes forget. Different base plates have different material on them. I have some here that are like a blue plastic that looks really bad. The white doesn't look as bad. There's also some tan ones. For this one, it looks like it's a white paper. I don't know if that will always be the case, but we're going to peel this off. To do that, we're going to stick our finger underneath one of the edges here and just peel it away. On the bottom, we should be able to peel this away kind of in one piece because there's no, it's just a solid piece of plastic. On the top, however, we have the entire track layout engraved into the piece, and so we're going to have to peel this off in multiple pieces in between each of the track layout pieces. So I'm going to peel this off and then we'll proceed to that point. So there we've prepped the track piece. We got the plastic peeled off on both sides. We'll set that off to the side. The next step is going to be to cut out the track. So as I mentioned earlier, the tip sheet kind of says to use nail clippers. I like to use a pair of flush edge wire cutters. You can get really any of these from a craft store or from wherever. I purchased these ones on Amazon. I'll put the link below. It's not an affiliate link. There's no pressure to use these ones. I don't even know if they're the best ones. They just happen to be what I'm using. But with these, you're just going to simply go around. Next to the track, you'll notice these little itty bitty tabs that you just have to cut. And you want to cut them as close to the track as possible. So that's where the flush edge wire cutters come in really handy. Also, a new pair is really nice. And so, I've done several models behind me. And so over time, they do get dull. This pair is, I've done 7 or 8 models with this one so far, and it's still cutting really nicely. You just don't have to put really any pressure. It just cuts right through the metal. Eventually, they do wear out and get a little bit dull, and you'll have to either sharpen them or just replace them. I usually buy a 2-pack on Amazon, so when it wears out, I toss a pair and just move on to the next one. But yeah, like I said, I'll share a link down below. But right now, I'm just going to cut out each of the pieces, lay them out, and then we'll proceed to that point. So now we've got all of the track pieces cut out and laid out in the order they're going to be installed. I like to lay them out in the order just so we know what we're working with here. So it's time to begin assembly. Before we begin, I'm actually going to do something that's not included in the kit. So each of the kits does come with a little sign here. Here's the little Medusa sign that says the name of the coaster. I like to do something bigger. So I've actually cut out the Medusa logo here in like a metallic vinyl. So I'm going to actually apply this to the base plate. Fortunately, this base plate actually has a lot of empty room. In fact, the next 3 Nanocoasters we're doing are actually going to allow for fairly large logos. Sometimes you don't have a lot of room to work with, but this one and the 2 from Great America that I have both have a lot of space. If this is something you want to do as well, I will include the link to the SVG for the Medusa logo down below, and you can cut it out yourself. So I just cut this out as a 4-inch logo. I'm going to apply it to the base plate. Like I said, this is not included with the kit, but it's something that I feel adds just a little bit, extra to it. Some people like to do like the landscaping, things like that, and that's cool as well. But yeah, this is what I choose to do. And so that's what it looks like with the logo on the plate. So this is going to be the first piece of track here. And this one is actually going to use quite a bit of bending. And so we're going to use a few things here. I like to just grab little round objects I have laying around the house. I got, batteries, a socket head, bottle of paint. Things like that will help you get better curvature as you're bending the pieces. So we're going to use those to help us out. So with this piece, you'll notice we have these little itty bitty tabs that are going to stick through, and then we have this one long one. So this long one is actually going to go right here, and this piece is almost going to S around. So typically I don't do a lot of pre-bending with my pieces, but sometimes it's almost crucial. And so this one I'm actually going to just kind of put over the track and just kind of bend it. And you don't want to do any hard kinks. You don't want to put your fingers close together. Separate out your fingers a little bit, and then start bending to kind of get the rough shape, and try to line up the tabs with the holes on the base plate. Like I said, this piece is probably more bending than 90% of the pieces I've seen in nano coasters. Typically when there's this much bending, they break it up into multiple pieces. But like I said, I'm just going to do a little bit of pre-bending here, here in the middle, and I'm going to try to drop these 4 tabs actually down into place to kind of hold it. And then like for these bigger curves here, like I said, this curve is about the same size as my socket head here. And so I can put this on the base plate and then just kind of wrap the track piece around it. And that's going to help give us just the curvature we want, without giving us any major kinks in the track. So we'll do this at this end. The tab here at this end is actually bent. Let me bend it flat again and get all these tabs down in their holes. And then the same thing at the other end, just kind of wrap it around the curve and line up each of the tabs with the holes. Now once we have all those tabs in place, we're actually going to come underneath, make sure we hold the track down so that it doesn't move, and then bend these over. You want to make sure that when you're bending, you don't cover up any other holes. Sometimes holes are really close to each other on the track, and so this piece, it doesn't look like that's going to be an issue. But you'll want to make sure you don't bend over and cover any other holes. Also, with pieces towards the edge, I like to bend inwards. Other than that, it doesn't matter really which way you bend. So there's the first track piece installed. Now the shaping on this isn't perfect, so I'm actually going to put this socket again in these round pieces and just kind of press it and mold the track to it, just to kind of give it a little bit better rounded shape without having any of the harsh bends. And so that's going to create our first piece installed. So the second piece isn't going to have near as much bending. It's going to be this one that's mostly flat here, and it's actually going to come off of the last, or the end of the first piece we did. And there's going to be a slight bend, but mostly this looks like it's going to be going into, I believe, yeah, the final brake run in the station area. So we'll first start with the 2 straight pieces and line those ones up. And then here at the other end, we'll just kind of do a slight bend, line up the 3rd tab and drop it down into place. Once again, we'll bend these over on the bottom, making sure we're not covering up any holes. And then where the 2 track pieces come together down here, I like to kind of, come in here and bend it a little bit just to make sure that they line up perfectly. And so that's going to be our second piece of track installed. So for the 3rd piece, we're going to be using this one that has a little sharp hill in it, tall hill at one end and then flat at the other end. And this is going to come off the other end of the first piece. And so we're going to start right there where we were, and just line up the first 2 tabs. This one's going to have a little bit of an S bend as well, so we're going to bend it just like I said, following the track on the base plate. You can kind of get it exactly how you want it. We might use a little bit to shape some pieces here, but we're just going to line up each of these tabs and drop them down into place, and then bend over the tabs underneath to hold it. And now we have to do a little bit more shaping as well here, just to make sure we get this lined up. So where the 2 track pieces meet, of course, we got to do a little bit of bending there to make them line up. I'm actually going to put the socket head right there and see if we can just get it to round right to the piece. And then just in some of the other little areas, we're going to just use the socket piece, like I said, just to get a little bit better rounding. We don't want kinks in the track. And so that's going to finish track piece number 3. For track piece number 4, we're going to be using this piece here, and once again we're going to continue just right off of where we left the last piece. For this one there is going to be a little bit of a bend here, and so I'm actually going to take the D-cell battery here, kind of figure out about where this goes, and we're going to put this here in the middle, and we're just going to wrap the track piece around. Now this isn't going to give us quite a tight enough bend, but it's going to give us something to start with, like I said, without giving us a kink. So we're just going to wrap it around. I did it in between. There's 2 short tabs and then there's a longer one on the other side of the turn. that will help us, like I said, get us a little bit here. And so now I'm going to come on here and I'm going to insert this long tab first, and then I'm going to come backwards and insert these two shorter tabs into place. And then the rest of the track piece will just kind of follow the base plate layout. Press it all down and then bend over the tabs. And we'll come up above here once again and make sure that everything just looks good. Over here I'm actually going to put the socket in here. It's a little bit smaller. If I had a C-cell battery, that would actually fit better in here. I don't know where my C-cell batteries are right now. Couldn't find one, so I'm using without, but it would actually fit this curve just perfect. The socket's a little bit smaller than the C-cell, and the D-cell is a little bit too big. But that is going to complete track piece number 4. So track piece number 5 is going to be this piece here, and it's actually not going to connect to anything we've done so far. It's actually going to come right over here above where I put my logo, so above this big blank area here. This one's not going to have much bending either. There's going to be a little bit of an S-curve at both ends, but for this we'll start with the small tab here and then bend it around just a little bit to the larger tab, and then there's a small tab next to that, and then from there we'll just follow the slight curve of the base plate. Press this in and then bend over the tabs underneath. And once again we'll just come up above and make sure this is following kind of the track layout. Like I said, not a lot of bending in that, but that is going to complete step 5 and the first side of the sheet of instructions. So this is going to be the next track piece, and it's going to actually connect the piece of track we just did with the track we had done previously. So it's going to kind of create like an S shape in between these. This track piece may look like a mirror of itself, but there is one slight difference. At one end there is a longer tab down here, and at the other end there's two small tabs for holes. And so that'll kind of show you how this is going to go. For this one I'm also going to do a little bit of pre-bending, so I'm going to kind of put it over the track here and see exactly where we want our curves. And so I'm just going to wrap this just around the D-cell battery. Like I said, this isn't going to get us completely the curve that we need, but it's going to give us a starting point. And so on both ends I'm going to just come in here and I'm going to kind of bend it into an S shape, just like that, so that we have just a starting point here. And so on the track piece we had just previously done at that end is where the two small tabs are going to connect. So the two small tabs will drop down into the two openings in the base plate there. Then in the middle of the S bend there's also two small tabs, and then at the other end is where the large tab is going to drop down into place. So we can just press all of those down and then bend over the pieces underneath, and then come back above and make sure that everything is just lining up properly. Make sure that the connections are kind of all in place. Make sure we like the roundness on this, the curves. Like I said, we can just come in here, a few kinks, but we can fix them there with that piece of with the socket wrench there. And that is going to complete track piece number 6. So track piece number 7 is going to be this piece here with the vertical loop right after the first drop, as well as I believe it's a dive loop. I think that's the way you approach it, looking at this, yeah. And so this is actually going to go over here. It's going to connect to the other end of this piece here, and it's just going to kind of be flat. This one actually has absolutely no bending. This will be a really easy piece to drop in. We can just kind of line up each of the tabs and drop them down into place, and then just bend them over underneath. Really easy. It's really nice when you have a piece that doesn't need any bending, especially after doing a few difficult ones. Just kind of gives you a break from that step. But that's going to complete step number 7. So step number 8 is going to be the final track piece here. So this is going to be the lift hill, so the turn out of the station, lift hill, first drop. This one doesn't have a lot of bending in the actual track, but it does have it in the supports. So you'll notice, there is a little bit of bending out of the station too. But with each of the supports you'll notice these angle bends. So with the way these Nanocoasters are done, the angle bends are all part of the flat piece, but they actually need to bend in towards me. I actually haven't found a great way to do this yet. Needle nose pliers works okay. I have a pair of tweezers here. It'd be nice if the track pieces were a little bit thinner or scored. But here I'm going to use just tweezers and just kind of take each of these and twist them around 90 degrees in towards me. And so then we'll have our angle supports for the lift hill. So there we have all those now bent in. Probably not perfect, but good enough for what we're doing here. So down here at the turnaround, we're going to need to do a little bit of pre-bending just because it is kind of a sharp turn. So I'm actually going to put the socket piece in here. It's a little bit too big, but we can kind of just use it, like I said, to wrap the track piece around, get us just our curvature. And then from there, we can just line up each of the tabs and drop them down into place. And then on the first drop, there is a slight bend down into the first vertical loop, or into the vertical loop. I think there's only one on this ride. But we can just kind of follow the base plate and do a slight bend to line those tabs up. And then we'll bend over these last remaining tabs just to hold this last piece in place. And then once again, come up above and just make sure everything's bent to our liking and shaped just perfectly. So the last remaining step is going to be to do the station building and the little sign for the ride. So the station building for all the Nanocoasters except for Emperor that I've done so far, it's just been this little house that you will fold and bend over. So we'll bend it into a little house, and this is going to go over the little station area here. We'll drop the two tabs down into place and bend them over. And then the sign is super simple. There's just one last remaining slot here on the base plate. We'll drop that into place, bend the tab backwards, and then just kind of angle the sign backwards a little bit. So that's going to complete Medusa from Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, just as it is in the kit. Now if you've seen my other videos, you know something I like to do is to add a little bit of a felt bottom. So the bottom of these Nanocoasters with all these tabs we just did can be a little bit rough, and so this is just a piece of adhesive felt that I purchased from Amazon. Has an adhesive built already into it. And so with this, we can actually take the Nanocoaster and just line it up. I like to take one of the longer edges and line it up on here so there's less cutting. But this will help us to create, like I said, a smooth bottom. Sometimes you can get more than one Nanocoaster out of a piece of felt. Sometimes you can't. This one is questionable whether I'll be able to use this for another one. We'll have to see what I have coming up in the future. But I don't ever throw the scraps away unless they're really small. But for this, I have a link to the felt down below on Amazon. If you want to do this yourself, or just any adhesive felt will work. So I just kind of take my pencil now and trace around the Nanocoaster on the paper here. And then once we've done that, I take my scissors and I cut around just inside where I did the marking. I don't like so the felt does stretch a little bit, so I don't like it hanging off the edge afterwards. And so by cutting just inside, we can just cover basically the bottom of it. We at least cover all the tabs and give us something smooth. So that when the Nanocoaster slides around, it doesn't scratch up the surface it's on or catch on anything, and the tabs are also held in place permanently. So I'm just going to cut this out really quickly, and then we'll proceed. So there we have our cutout piece of felt. To apply this, I'm actually going to just peel off just a little bit of the paper backing, maybe like a third of it, and then we'll tear it off. And then we can line up the Nanocoaster covering the felt perfectly. We'll start at the end where it's the paper backing still there, and then we'll just press down, and now you'll see that this is held on. Now we can peel away the rest of the paper backing, and I'll just use the edge of the table and my eyes and just kind of make sure we're lining this up perfectly so that it lines up with the bottom of the Nanocoaster. Now if you do have a little bit of overhang, I have a little bit here on the back side. You can get your scissors and just simply kind of go around it again and cut it off. It's easier if you don't have that happen. Like I said, it does stretch, so I'd cut it smaller than the actual base plate, but it still did a little bit of overhang here on it. Probably I just didn't apply it perfectly. But now we have this felt bottom so that when you slide it down on the table, it's not going to scratch anything up. Those tabs are now hidden underneath. Pull the scrap off. The tabs are hidden underneath, and so they're not gonna, fall out either. But this is the completed Medusa Nanocoaster kit from Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Like I said, available from the park for $37.99. Yeah, really cool kit. I'm excited to put it back on my shelf. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more Nanocoaster videos in the future, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching and have a great day.